You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for December 2nd, 2022. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we always assumed George W. Bush had lied to the 9/11 Commission. It's The Professional Left with Drift Class and Blue Gal. Yeah.
Happy December, everybody.
December. Welcome to December.
It's like 20 degrees outside this morning when we woke up.
25 degrees in 24 hours. So
yeah,
this is
dropped.
Illinois, man. Welcome. Come
chilly,
on.
Chilly.
Come on.
Gotta find a little warm spot to put the lights up outside, and then we'll be all set.
Yes. Well, yeah. That's after this podcast. That's where you'll find me out front, stringing lights. So.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. Although you're not allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore because of Biden. So
cancel culture.
Yeah, we're clearly violating some law that is entirely in the minds of Sean Hannity viewers by saying Merry Christmas. So
exactly.
Happy Advent, by the way.
Happy Advent. Happy Hanukkah. Whatever you celebrate, we're here for it. We like celebrations.
Happy Mithras Day.
Oh, the most important this week.
Yeah.
Happy Zappadan.
Oh, that's right. It's Zappadan.
Zappadan starts this week, where we celebrate all things Frank Zappa.
That's right. Damn.
And we celebrate it from the day he died to the day he was born, which are both in December.
That's right.
So go look that up. I'm not going to look that up right now, but I'll be doing a Frank Zappa Photoshop this week for Zappadan. I always do one.
Well, and after this podcast is in the can, I will not be stringing lights, apparently. I'll be doing my Zappadan shopping, which is always tricky. Everybody gets a soul patch. Everybody
gets a soul patch for Zappadan. Yeah. But we started that years ago, back when I was with the Aristocrats blog, which doesn't even exist on the internet anymore. Sandy Underpants and Mark Hoback and all those guys, and I was there to provide feminine balance, I think.
Yeah.
But it was fun. Yeah. And they came up with this idea of Zappadan. This was, of course, after Frank Zappa had passed away. And, I knew Mike Finnegan, the organist who initiated Mike's blog roundup at Crooks and Liars. He was a friend of Frank Zappa's and had played with Frank Zappa and so knew Frank Zappa quite well. And I said, why do I think that Frank Zappa would think this whole Zappadan thing was just a gas and just totally funny and great? He said, because he would.
Because he would.
So this is a time to escape all of the commercialism of the holiday season and just celebrate Frank Zappa. And I wasn't a big Frank Zappa music fan before we started Zappadan, but I've come to appreciate more and more his artistry as time goes on. So,
and I had in high school, this going back a ways, high school, I had a couple of friends who were massive Zappa fans who got, a copy of Freak Out, an original copy. They went to Wax Tracks, they camped out. It was basically the high fidelity guys.
Right.
People I went to high school
they all happen to be mathematicians too, for some reason. Yeah. I mean, it's so weird. Yeah.
And we played, the like lunar landing game on Brad's TRS-80. Entering formulas for not crashing on the moon. These were my people.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite a bridge too far, but a couple of these guys were serious musicians and are still all these years later, decades later, still serious musicians. Mm-hmm. I was not. Right. And so when we put on Captain Beefheart for the third time and really listen to it this time.
You got to really listen to it, man.
This is all, I'm in my late teens and this is all wasted on me. I'm like, I don't get any of this shit. Years later, I came to appreciate it and I came to understand it. And we went to go see, 2,000 motels, 200 motels at the late show in Homewood. And they gradually got me into the vestibule of Zappa appreciation enough that I wouldn't sound like an idiot when they were talking. But I've come to mellow in my old age and enjoy Zappa's music and enjoy his legacy as a free speech advocate and someone who drove Bob Novak insane, and on like that. So good on you. It's a great holiday. Everyone should celebrate it. Should be mandatory.
Yep. All right. So get rolling on to the news and the podcast and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And I got my notes here. Paper notes. Wiggle that in the face of all of us.
You know, I just write mine on the back of my hand like Keith Olbermann suggested to Mickey Mantle. So if you hear me dipping in and out of the microphone, it's I wrote them on the wrong side of my hand. So
is there anything you want to add to George W. Bush trying to cover up?
Oh,
because I have one thing I want to add, but you go first.
No, just he lied to the 9/11 Commission.
Yeah. Is that a surprise? No,
of course not.
He lied all the time about 9/11.
No, this was to the Commission.
Iraq War.
This was under oath to the Commission, and he just lied and lied and lied and lied.
Yeah.
And now that those documents are being declassified, it's like, oh yeah, all the stuff we knew, all the stuff we figured, all the stuff that was pretty obvious about how I didn't know anything. Nobody told me. It was a complete surprise, and I had no idea what you're talking about. It was all bullshit. He had ample and repeated warnings, and he just lied to the Commission, and nothing happened to him because, this is for the new listeners out there. Once upon a time, George Bush was the worst president in American history.
He was, and before that, Nixon was the worst president.
And before that, it was Nixon. That's right.
Speaking of Photoshops, I did a Photoshop of W. Bush and Nixon laughing at Trump. Look, George, there's the worst president in the history of America.
You're off the hook, man. That's great. Yeah, and nothing happened to George Bush, and he left office and took up
which is and nothing happened to the Republican Party. They just rebranded.
No, just said
as George the Tea Party, and then forgot about it, and got to keep voting and be participating, even though they voted for a liar enthusiastically.
Yeah,
and made fun of John Kerry's war record at their convention, and behaved just horribly as they did.
And this was during what all of your Never Trump friends will refer to as the good old days.
The good old days, exactly.
When it was moral and civic virtues and all those things, and rectitude, and they all behaved themselves, and nobody was ever nasty or mean or lied.
No, everyone was classy and fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Driftglass, the only thing I want to add to this whole George W. Bush renaissance of remembering his lying, and it's great to see Keith Olbermann doing no fair remembering stuff and remembering the past. I'm grateful to see that. I want to talk for just a second about Michelle Obama's love for George Bush.
Yes.
Because I think the explanation for that is very easy to see. Michelle Obama came into the White House in 2009 with two very young daughters, wondering what the hell is going to happen here. How am I going to survive this? How am I going to function? How am I going to be a mom? How am I going to be a first lady? We did it, and I'm grateful we did it, but she felt, I'm sure, as any normal person, normal middle-class person who didn't have a Bush dynasty behind them. And remember, that's what George W. Bush had in his legacy, was a dad who was a president and a mom who was first lady. And H.W. and Barbara have long been considered the absolute best first couple in terms of how they treated the White House staff. That has been documented, heavily documented, that they know how to treat the servant class because they're wealthy, they're experienced, they have experience in military. George H.W. Bush was in the military. He knows how to treat people beneath him with respect and still be in command.
Right.
So, Barbara.
Michelle Obama, unique among first ladies, perhaps, came in with credible death threats being leveled against her family.
Absolutely. Credible death threats.
Yeah.
But also a middle-class background.
Right.
And no experience with Washington, with the responsibilities that she was going to have as first lady, and the deep concern about her children.
Right. Yeah.
And here is George W. Bush and Mrs. Bush and the two daughters of the Bushes showing the White House to Michelle Obama and the girls And there's those wonderful pictures of the grown Bush daughters showing the young, very young Obama daughters how to run up and down the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just having fun. And, this is going to be your house, and this can be your room, and this can be whatever. And setting those young girls at ease.
Mm-hmm.
And I can totally see how Michelle Obama would never fucking forget that.
Right. Absolutely.
That at a very scary time in her life, when she's about to jump in the deep end, here were some people who'd been there, who had not only their own experience, but generational experience with the White House and the White House staff and how to manage the emotions and so forth. And they welcomed her and eased her life at that point as a mom and as a wife and as a first lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she never forgot it. So, and I think plain and simple, she pushed all politics aside and forever showed appreciation for someone helping her through that incredible leap that she had to take.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. That's very good insight.
Yeah. So we, guess what? We are not doing a No Fair Remembering Stuff podcast next week because Mama needs a break after six David Brooks episodes. Yeah. This gives you an opportunity to binge.
Yeah.
Binge the David Brooks podcast, which the reviews are in and they're good. People liked it.
Yeah, they're good.
We're glad that people like these kind of podcasts. I sent you some notes today, Driftglass, on Joe Scarborough.
Yes.
And so that's going to be our next one. But you want to talk about what the response has been to 6 episodes of David Brooks?
Yeah. Well, I just FYI, I want to shout out a fellow blogger, old school blogger I had a Zoom lunch with this week.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a lovely conversation, and we disagreed on a few points and agreed on most of everything else. But
I think you can say his blog name on the air.
Sure, I can. It was Bosgood.
Bosgood from Daily Kos, right?
Bethesda.
Bethesda from Daily Kos.
Bethesda. Okay. Followed by 3 numbers on Daily Kos. But we had a lovely chat, and very nice guy, and deep historical knowledge. And again, we have a slight disagreement over a couple of things, but he's clearly, we're all in the same boat and we're all rowing in the same direction. But there was a wide range of responses to 6 episodes devoted to David Brooks, which was not really about David Brooks. It was about the mainstream media. And since you can't talk about the entire machine writ large in granular detail without doing a 500-part podcast, David Brooks is the best proxy for everything that's wrong with the mainstream media, and still is. It's his persistent existence in defiance of all logic, reason, marketing, marketplace values, capitalism. I mean, there's just no reason for him to exist at all. And yet there he is all the time. And how is that possible is a key into why the media is permanently fucked and can never, ever save itself, because it's just all the wrong incentive structures are in place. So the opinions range from please do 10 more David Brooks episodes to please enough with David Brooks to can you just do 30 minutes a week on the latest David Brooks columns? And
which was one of my ideas. I said, if you really want to, if you want to continue to do this Driftglass, you could just do what, PBS NewsHour does. Read David Brooks's columns to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could hypothetically ask him, why is he such a bullshit artist?
Yeah. I could every Friday, like Keith Olbermann does his live read.
Oh yeah.
But
you could live read just like I think you'd get in trouble with the New York Times.
I'm sure I would, but it wouldn't be the first. I don't think they'd notice. But these 6 podcasts and the ones that came before that, remember, were a shakedown cruise. This was us warming up and working out the details. And Brooks was a perfect manifestation of everything that's both wrong and opaque about the mainstream media. The thing that is like glaringly, awfully, horribly broken about it that nobody who works in the media will talk about at all, ever. You can get former people in the media to talk about it. You can get people who do podcasts now, who used to be in the media to talk about it. But nobody actively employed in the United States political media will talk about the most glaring problems with their employer, which kind of makes sense because you get fired that way. But it is so weird that the one institution that's supposed to be chartered by the Constitution to get important information to the public to make decisions is completely incapable of analyzing itself when everyone can see that it's broken. Just can't do it. And that is a subject that is inexhaustible, and we're going to tackle it from all different directions. But thank you for all the feedback. And I'm pretty tired of talking about David Brooks.
We need between 19 and 22 more Patreons to meet our goal. So if you're in a position to add a contribution to our Patreon, it's patreon.com/proleftpod and become a patron of our work. You would be supporting this show as well as No Fair Remembering stuff. And $5 a month does it. And we would really appreciate that.
Well, I'll tell you what, and here's a deal I'll make to all the listeners out there. If David Brooks will sign up for $1,000 a month, I will burn every copy of the David Brooks podcasts that we've done so far.
You'll delete all of them? Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and focus on Ross Douthat and Brett Stevens.
Take that, Ross Douthat. You might get $1,000 from Ross Douthat. Keep talking about David Brooks.
Or Paul Krugman. Here's some more shit about David Brooks that nobody knows about. Yeah, just slip it over the transom there, Paul.
Slip that over. Any secrets you know about David Brooks, New York Times staff, feel free. We will keep you anonymous.
We absolutely will. Now, you want to talk about Brian Kemp and Medicaid, right?
I want to talk about this dumb governor of Georgia.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me the more I think about it that he's being this kind of a jerk, but because of the Republican legislature he has. One thing to note is that when you're looking at states that have not expanded Medicaid, they've had years and years and years to do it. And Biden has sweetened the deal for states that haven't done it, making it less coming out of their state coffers. It was 10% and now I don't know what they're doing, but it's a lot easier for states now to expand Medicaid. It's so ridiculous that states haven't expanded Medicaid because there really is no downside, especially for rural hospitals, to get that funding.
Right.
And it makes your state healthier. It just makes people who are working class people, it gives them access to health insurance. But Georgia and the rest of the Confederacy and Texas, and there's a couple other states too, but it's mostly the Confederacy and Texas have not expanded Medicaid yet.
No.
After all this time.
Yep.
And so I think what Kemp is trying to do, and this is me being kind to him, is he's trying to find a backdoor to expand Medicaid in some way to get some money for certain hospitals and certain healthcare concerns without going full Obamacare because we can't allow the black guy to have a success.
No.
In our state, we can't.
Can't do it.
So the way that Kemp the plan that he has is to expand it just a little bit.
Just the tip.
And questions remain about the rollout of this plan and who and how many are going to be in this low-income pool of people who will be eligible. But it's going to be a limited increase, and there's going to be a work requirement.
Yeah, that's the part.
Which is states have tried to do this already. They've failed. The courts have said it's unconstitutional. It's just absurd. Mm-hmm. It creates a government bureaucracy. You'd think, Republicans wouldn't want to do this. It creates a government bureaucracy instead of employing people at rural healthcare centers.
Right.
Which is what the expansion of Medicaid will do.
Uh-huh.
And so they're going to be the only state in the country, again, because other states have tried and had it knocked down. Work requirements, a minimum of 80 hours of work or volunteering a month in order to be eligible for this program. Well, the whole point of expanding Medicaid is these are people who are working. If you're disabled and unable to work, you already qualify for Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a child and unable to work, or if you're a senior citizen and in a Medicaid-funded nursing home, you are not required to have a work requirement. So this work requirement that Kemp wants to set up triples the cost per patient for the Medicaid program to the state of Georgia. So he's creating a bureaucracy. He's increasing the cost to Georgia taxpayers, not federal taxpayers, And instead of saying, let Biden pay for it, he's punishing and seeing how he can kick poor people and create some sort of screening process to deserve health insurance. Because, people are going to take that health insurance
Just
and
abuse
go
it. Yeah, crazy.
to Vegas with it.
Yeah. No, this is the same argument that everyone had on the right with Obamacare.
Yeah.
Which was, it'll be abused, and the whole argument that abused how exactly? How is it that you abuse visits to doctors, preventive medicine?
Well, and after COVID, there's no excuse.
No.
There's no excuse. You know that keeping people insured means there are less disease vectors walking around.
Okay. See, there's the problem. The problem with your thinking, Blue Gal, is pandemics come and go, but Republicans' contempt for the poor is forever. And you have to kick poor people because the vestigial bullshit that Republicans still hang on to from the 80s is poverty is a result of moral degeneracy, moral deficiency. If you're poor, it's because you're a bad person or you're a lazy person or there's something wrong with you. And the way to fix that is to punish them. And yeah, they get sick, and yeah, that's unfortunate, but we need to make it really even more miserable to be poor, and then people will stop being poor. And as long as there are Republicans living, walking the earth, this sick ideology is never going to go away. It'll be diminished because it's insane, and it's counterproductive, and it leads to terrible health outcomes for all kinds of reasons. But this is the dying of the Ayn Rand, survival of the fittest, Paul Ryan version of...
Well, and don't tell me it doesn't have something to do with the Confederacy either.
Oh, it absolutely does. Poor black people.
Yeah.
Shiftless, these are welfare queens. And that's it always comes back to that. It always comes back to those fucking people in those backwards shithole states hanging on to their pride from the 1850s. Yep. And until they're gone, and until the earth is salted and their ideology is taught in schools as a horrible thing that no one should ever take any pride in, they're just going to keep passing this down generationally like hemophilia.
Yeah. But instead, Georgia is turning down $710 million from the Obama administration, from the Biden administration.
Yeah. Leaving money on the table. Guess why Wisconsin doesn't have rail?
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't have high-speed rail. Charlie Sykes killed it.
Yep. That's just a government program. That's not going to hire anybody. Yes, it is.
Well, and you might remember that, resistance hero Michael Steele, before he became resistance hero Michael Steele, who was shocked to find all the racists in the Republican Party. Was on Meet the Press. This was when he was Rush Limbaugh's footstool.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd go on places like Meet the Press and explain the Obama administration was lying because government jobs aren't real jobs.
Yeah.
Those aren't real jobs. I'm like, dude, first of all, you had a government job. My mom was a teacher for 45 years. You're telling me she didn't have a real job?
Yeah.
And I went down a whole long list of all the things from Coast Guards to judges that are paid for by tax dollars. And according to Michael Steele, none of those are real jobs because real jobs last forever. They never go away. Mm-hmm. Government jobs go away. I'm like, really? Tell that to all the people that got laid off during the recession.
Yeah.
About how real jobs never. And it's just this horrible puppet show that these assholes put on for the last vestiges of the Confederacy to make them feel better about their shitty lives and give them someone to blame.
Yeah. So let's talk about Resolute Square, Driftglass.
Yeah. Well, Bethesda in 1971 and I were talking just the other day on the Zoom. And two of the things we agreed on was youth vote is where Democrats should focus their attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because, they're not making more old people every day, but more young people are becoming 18 every day of the week.
And that's why Fox News, by the way, is all over how evil the TikTok is.
Yes. TikTok
is digital fentanyl, Driftglass.
Right. Ooh, man. It's coming across the border.
The internet is digital fentanyl.
Hunter Biden's laptop is full of TikTok. That's the problem. God damn these people. Anyway, so that's one thing we agreed on. The other thing is the media. There needs to be a liberal media. There isn't one. I don't care what 3 hours a day on MSNBC that's marginally liberal. There ain't no liberal media. And the problem is, as always, and this is something that I'm pretty sure all of liberal podcasters, all 9 of us, and all liberal bloggers, all 12 of us, will agree on, which is wealthy liberals will not pay for a liberal media. They will not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why, because these people have, among them, huge salaries. They have large amounts of money to tap into. They have experience in the media. These are people who make movies for a living, shoot TV shows for a living, and cannot pull their shit together enough to come up with anything remotely approaching Fox News or Newsmax or anything. They're just, they won't do it. So we're always stuck in the same loop. Like, well, we know what needs to be done, and the people with the resources to do it categorically refuse to do it. And so every now and then, a new media company comes into existence. And this one's called Resolute Square. And I'm going to read you their blurb. From the fearless voices behind the Lincoln Project comes Resolute Square, a community of creators, thinkers, strategists, and activists committed to taking on autocrats and their right-wing media mouthpieces to defend democracy. This is from co-founder Rick Wilson. We're building a media empire solely dedicated to defending democracy and attacking those who would like to see it die. And starting for just $5 a month, you can help grow it. So, there you go.
So, they're putting their hands out for $5 a month too?
Sure, everybody is. But the difference between them and their founders and every other person is that they get free advertising on MSNBC.
Yeah.
They get, every time they fart or scratch or something happens, they have, next up, it's Tim Miller and Rick Wilson and Charlie Sykes. And it really is the only asset cable television has is time.
Yeah.
And airtime and the ability to get lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people to think that person's a good person, that person's awesome, without knowing their history or background. They don't do that for existing liberal media people. You're never going to see Stephanie Miller or Hal Sparks on MSNBC. But for Rick Wilson, they'll always find time. And Rick Wilson is now building his second or third media empire.
I know. This is like the third one, at least. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure he'll get a lot of money. And you know what? It might work out. Who knows? History might prove me to be a fool. Like, Resolute Square saved America. But I have a feeling that if anyone believes that, it's only because Resolute Square keeps saying it over and over and over again, and it says it all over cable news. Yeah. But that's a thing that's happening, and thought you'd like to know.
We want to thank Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois.
Yes.
Because thanks to those three people and all of the people, Andy Slavitt, let's put him in there. All the people that worked on Obamacare, all the people that expanded Medicaid in Illinois, etc. You, Driftglass, me, and our children have health insurance next year.
Yes, we do.
And the cost of insurance for the two of us went up by $95 in 1 year, which is a lot. Yeah. But it's still a lot less than it would be without subsidies.
Oh, yes.
And the children, all of them being full-time students, have with part-time jobs. All three of them have part-time jobs. Let me be clear. But regardless, both, the two girls are on the edge of being out of state. Youngest child is in St. Louis, and middle child is just over the border in Wisconsin. And they have Illinois Medicaid. And they will have Illinois Medicaid as long as they're full-time students. And it has been, since Pritzker became governor, so much easier to just keep the kids covered. There are so many fewer hoops to jump through to just make sure that my, young adult children have health insurance. And listen up, Brian Kemp, it's cheaper.
It is. In the long run.
It's cheaper. Are they full-time students? Yes. Health insurance.
They're covered, period. Move on. Let's move on. Yeah.
And it means that all of these little healthcare centers that dot the border in East St. Louis and in northern Illinois have college students coming in with insurance. And that employs people in those communities. And those are good white-collar intake healthcare jobs.
No, they're not real jobs. Just ask
They're
Michael
not real jobs. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, no, they are.
I'll tell you, those aren't real jobs. They'll go away. As soon as people stop
having
having
go to a hospital administrator and ask them if those are real jobs.
Well, as soon as people stop having illnesses of any kind, those jobs will go away. And Michael Seal will be proven right sometime in the year 3000.
Ask the CEO of St. Joseph's Health System if those are real jobs.
Yeah. Yep.
That she's trying to fill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. It's, the thing to do is give people health insurance and then don't hound them all the time to make sure they're working or they're not making too much money or you're a full-time student. You're enrolled at a university. We assume you're not working full-time. It's just easier. Why bother? Why? Because you hate college students? Oh, that's going to work out real good for you with Gen Z then. That's why Gen Z lost the midterms for you.
If I may remind you, Blue Gal.
Yeah.
That as we talked about on No Fair Remembering stuff, elite universities are just nearly as bad as Donald Trump. Nearly as bad. Both sides. And every time there's a both sides argument, two sides
it's elite universities like Yale.
It's elite universities and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump and what's going on with these elite universities.
Yep.
So
and campus speech codes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so kick those people too, because it's hammered into their brains that poor people, brown people, and these hippie college students at these elite universities.
You keep being anti-people and people are not going to vote for you.
No. Doesn't matter.
And that's why they want to get rid of democracy.
Right.
Is because it's a pain in the ass to try to keep power when we have to depend on people to vote for us.
Mitch McConnell's going to burn in hell, but he can do math. And he can see where his party's headed. But, hey, that's why we need to pack the courts with wingnuts.
Exactly.
Who will just secure everything.
No, it's all about power. Yeah. So Driftglass plays podcasts on his phone while he's walking around the house being wonderful. And Driftglass does so much around here. He does the litter box. This morning he did the litter boxes and he's got Keith Olbermann or he's got the Bulwark going on his phone in his pocket. And so I get to hear snippets of these shows as he's walking in and out of my office, cleaning the litter boxes and doing all the puttering around.
Yeah. Laundry and groceries and cooking.
Right. And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So then he said, "Can I play this clip for you?"
Yes.
Of the Bulwark. And I said, "Sure." He said, you need to be sitting down when you listen to this. And I said, "Okay." So I am.
Yes.
And who was the person that was on with Charlie Sykes?
Unreconstructed Iraq war pimp and moralizing guy, Peter Weiner.
Peter Weiner was on with Charlie Sykes.
Yes, they were. And they were having a
final do you want to tell people what the topic of this show, of their conversation was?
The general topic was that some Republicans are abandoning Trump, but for the wrong reasons.
Yes, and should we forgive them or not?
That was part of it. It was very much beginning with, they're not abandoning because he's immoral. They're abandoning for utilitarian reasons. But then
because he's a loser, because he lost the midterms for them, right?
And if he becomes a winner, they'll come to him again. And Bill Barr says, he's unhinged and he's evil, but I'll still support him if he's the candidate. And and the first thing was the setting of the time barrier. Everything they talked about among and between each other was the last 5 or 6 years, since 2015, since 2016, since I wrote my book in 2016. I cannot emphasize enough how much the entire history of America has disappeared with these people.
Yeah. Speaking of George W. Bush, yes, right.
Now, you and I, Blue Gal, and some of our listeners might know that occasionally I will rail against the fact that people who actually did predict the Republican Party was going to go to the shithouse and was on this trajectory towards fascism decades ago and for decades were all treated like shit by people like Charlie Sykes.
Right.
And Peter Weiner. We're crackpot alarmists, and we told you this was going to happen, and, it's not that it's not that you won't say we were right. It's that you won't acknowledge we exist. And when we tell you we exist, and by the way, here's a thing I wrote 15 years ago, you block us. So you have a fetish about making sure that nobody holds you accountable and that nobody can tell you to your face that you were wrong. The entire podcast, half of it was Peter Weiner and Charlie Sykes sounding like Driftglass.
Yes, it was.
Oh my God, these new Republicans. They went along. We warned them, Blue Gal. Oh, we warned them. Yes, we did. Remember in 2016, we said it was going to go back. Oh, yeah, we told them. But did they listen? No, they did not listen. Oh, no, they did not. well, I'm willing to forgive them. And this is arrogating.
If they leave Trump now.
Yeah. If they leave Trump
that's
now.
sort of good enough.
The bar, I'm willing to, I'm willing to lower the bar. I'm willing to widen the gate. I'm willing to accept that they are, et cetera.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. These assholes don't give us any credit for being right all this time. Fuck these guys.
It did sound a lot like Driftglass at that point.
Like, how dare these people? They can't even bring themselves to say we were right. They can't do it. It would ruin them to say, Charlie Sykes was right.
I think this is the narcissism of small differences, Driftglass.
Sure.
It's why the Swedes and the Finns hate each other.
Right.
And Charlie Sykes will always be at odds because you have so much in common, Driftglass, with these guys.
No. Well, let's put it this way. I didn't use my position at the media at MSNBC to obliterate the liberals. To continue to hate people. I mean, Charlie Sykes and all of these guys still hate us. They're very clear about that. That we the campus speech codes and we should never have done this and Joe Biden was bad and Democrats suck at politics.
Well, and that was the question I asked you last night, Driftglass, was would Charlie Sykes be willing to tolerate the Green New Deal and the Elizabeth Warren wealth tax?
Oh, no.
In order to get rid of Nazis in the Republican Party.
Absolutely not. No. They're both equally bad. They're both bad. This is why we spent 6 fucking episodes on David Brooks.
And the Green New Deal.
Exactly. It's always both sides. There's always both sides of these people. And they will not. They will not. They have colonized the media. They will not talk to anyone who remembers the past. They won't do it. And I understand that these people are media. This is the only job they have. And they cannot, they're lying about the past, cannot bear a moment's scrutiny from anybody. So they stay the hell away from it.
But it's how they keep their cushy jobs.
Right.
It is.
And so, honestly, I will settle for the narcissism of small differences that Charlie Sykes believes history began in 2015.
Yeah.
And from 2015 on, my God, I'm a leader of the resistance. And my good friend Bill Kristol this. And my good friend Michael Steele that.
That's so funny. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Yeah, but the small difference we have is I believe history began in 1954 with the modern Republican Party. And you believe it began yesterday because all that other time was the time when you were the fucking problem. And you don't want, and I swear to God, what I'm saying now is the thing they were saying about these brand new Republicans who were showing up and expecting to be forgiven. They won't acknowledge they were the problem. They won't acknowledge that they made a mistake. And they won't acknowledge we were right all along, Blue Gal.
Yeah.
And that's what... And this was what Tim Miller said on the same goddamn podcast last week. Would it kill them to just admit we were right? I mean, for God's sakes, I'm willing to let them back in. But what the hell, man? Why can't you just admit we were right? Oh, can't do it. Just can't do it. Psychologically, emotionally, they're incapable of doing this. And they're being so fucking self-righteous about it and condescending about it. And like these nouveau Republicans who think they can just waltz in here and tell everybody that they're for. But I'm willing to forgive them as long as they, suck my dick.
Right.
And all of this is made perfect by the fact that these people all came from the GOP and were given jobs immediately in the liberal media to create an environment where they could get away with this shit.
Where both siderism was going to
and where no liberal voice would ever come in and contradict them. And that's why.
Speaking of that, would you talk for a minute about what Hayes Brown wrote at the MSNBC website today? That I thought was pretty cool.
Please, after you. You go right ahead.
Well, Hayes Brown at the MSNBC website has an article called "The GOP is Preparing to Learn Nothing All Over Again." And this does read like a Driftglass post from the Republican autopsy of 2013, right?
World's greatest suicide note, the Republican autopsy. Yeah.
That's what you called it back then.
Mm-hmm.
And Hayes Brown writes, the GOP is promising to conduct a review of its failures in 2022 to be better prepared for 2024. But Hayes Brown argues that such an investigation will likely be an exercise in futility. After losing a winnable election in 2012, Brown reminds us, the party promised to widen its appeal, but then Donald Trump helped obliterate the idea, that the GOP should court anybody beyond the very white, very conservative base, unquote, that he drew. The problem with the GOP trying to appeal to the public today, Brown writes, is that, quote, nobody knows what on earth today's Republican Party stands for except Trump.
Yeah.
Unquote.
Well, except we all know what the Republican Party stands for.
We all know what they stand for.
We all know what they stand for. And
they stand for, Kanye makes a lot of good points.
Yeah. That's it. And all these guys who are like, the only reason I joined the Nazi Party is I like big wide roads where you can drive fast. No,
right.
That's not the reason you joined the Nazi Party. The reason you joined the Nazi Party is because you're a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
And all these people were perfectly okay going along with this all along. And the only reason they're thinking about a little reformation around the edges is because Donald Trump's a loser. Just the same way they were all willing to go along with Newt Gingrich and Lee Atwater and Rush Limbaugh and all the rest of the people who led us to this moment. Which is why they do not want to talk about the past. Because the past.
And this is why I don't want to talk about Kanye on the Alex Jones show today. No. I just can't. Because it's a clown show of very dangerous ideas and people.
Yeah.
And we have decided in the media and in the internet, in the Wild West stage that we are living in right now with the internet, that mentally ill people and the voices of mentally ill people getting eyeballs and clicks makes it legitimate.
Blue Gal, can I make a transition here? I want to transition to a better way to get eyeballs and clicks.
Yeah.
By producing the best year in television ever.
Yeah.
I think November's not the right time. It should be December. I'm sorry, late December is the right time. But I would like to reflect on, because I was just going through all the TV shows that we've enjoyed and realizing all of them happened this year.
They all happened in 2022. Yeah.
Which was amazing. And, Station 11 was this year. And The Bear was this year. And Better Call Saul finale was this year. And Andor was this year. And The Old Man was this year. And Slow Horses was this year. Sandman, which we talked about on this podcast, was this year. Night Sky. Wonderful show. Beautiful, lyrical, awesome show that left undetermined what would happen next was this year. The Peripheral was this year. The excellent second season of Only Murders in the Building and Resident Alien was this year.
That's amazing.
Then there were a bunch of shows that critics love, but you and I never watch and never will watch, probably.
We just don't have time.
Yeah. Well, Severance, not for me. If you love it, that's great. White Lotus, not for me. We're not big wealth porn fans, so probably not going to happen. Succession, a show about scumbags who were like the Fox family, Murdoch family, only worse. I understand that every single person in America think this is a great show, but it was on this year. It came back this year. The very many Yellowstones were this year. The $1 Billion Hobbit show was this year. The Rings of Power. The $1 Billion Dragon show was this year. And this year we discovered Crackle. And we discovered Danger Man.
Danger Man is our thing. We got through season 1 of Danger Man. And it's like 36 episodes in season 1. Of this 1961 spy show that's really, really good.
It's really good.
Patrick McGowan.
And we both knew there was a prequel to The Prisoner. We both loved The Prisoner. We both knew, saw it when we were younger. And we knew that there was a show out there that was preceded it where he played a secret agent. In the United States, called Secret Agent Man.
Yeah, it's called Secret Agent on Crackle, but then you go and watch it and it's called Danger Man. And
Danger Man.
It's well written. It's I'm amazed by its efficiency.
Yeah.
The season 1 episodes, when he solved the crime, it's over.
Done.
It ends. They don't have like this big long conversation at the end about how I solved the crime, because we all see it. He solved it, and you're done.
You're done, and you move along to the next one, which is
next one.
Might take place in Beirut or
some imaginary country. There's lots of fun imaginary countries out there.
And the enemy is the enemy is the other side,
or the East. Yes,
the East.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people in blackface, not literal blackface, but people who were English actors wearing dark makeup, playing someone
in order to appear to be from the Middle East. Usually.
The Middle East.
Yeah.
And there are episodes where there was at least one episode where almost the entire cast was African American.
And actually African. Yeah.
But it's 1961, 62. And and Patrick McGowan it belongs in the same category as Shatner and Christopher Walken, as having an incredibly distinct style of speaking.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. And we're going out now.
Yeah.
And he's a really good actor. And it's just a blast to watch this thing from before I was aware of the world and my childhood, and see how good the writing can be, even when it's a shitty set on the back lot of the Lou Grade or Lou Air studio Sir Lou Grade studio in England.
Yep.
With a tiny cast of people who you will recognize in years to come.
Yes. A lot of them moved over to Bond movies.
Right. A lot of Bond villains.
Secondary. A lot of Bond villains, a lot of Bond secretaries. Yeah. It's just so well done. And
Robert
Secret
Shaw
Agent or Danger Man. And it is free on Crackle. Streaming on Crackle.
Yeah.
All right. So a little bit of housekeeping. We asked everybody how they would feel about us advertising other podcasts on our show, and it was unanimous. Go ahead and do it.
Sure.
I'd love to learn about other podcasts, etc. I spoke too soon because it turns out Buzzsprout is more than willing to have us sell ads on our show. They just don't have that many podcasts willing to buy ads anywhere.
Right.
This program has just started. So we did see one podcast that was listed, and it was literally two guys talking about video games and wrestling, and God bless them, they had 6 episodes out already.
Yeah. And those two guys were Chris Hayes and Ezra Klein, which was
and they're going to invite Chris Cillizza on. We'll tell you why in a minute.
Yeah.
But no, it was just not a good match for us. And I'm not saying that 670 episodes from now they won't be the number one podcast in America. Sure. They might be
monsters.
But other than that, there have been no listings at all. So we may be looking for another revenue stream other than that. This is work in progress. We are very grateful again for your Patreon support. Particularly as we start to launch in January, a regular second show every week.
Right.
That's a lot of work and changes the flavor of our entire week. It means that weekends are work days, and it is a commitment that we're willing to make because we have fun doing it, and it's the job that we want to do. So we hope you'll support us.
And we have yet to pick even Science Fiction University, which is coming back, and it just requires.
We got some ideas for that too.
Yeah, but there is we've never picked a podcast topic that we hate. That's drag to think about or talk about. We spend a lot of our time on politics and media in our lives and on this podcast.
And you are hearing a lot of what you're hearing is a conversation that Drip Class and I have all week anyway. From the time we get up to the time we go to bed. Yeah.
But, there's lots of stuff that interests us, and it would be great if we could do a chat about any of them. I'd love to have, I know this would just kill our sound editor, who's also my wife, have guests on, but I'm thinking aloud about No Fair Remembering stuff might be a good place to plug in a guest or two It
would, and especially if you do the interviewing and I'm kind of out of it or whatever, if it's, what is hard to edit is 3 voices.
Yeah, it is.
So we either do 3 voices and we just do it live without editing, or we just have you talking to somebody. And that's fine. You're a good interviewer. So
and that's when I just started talking over Rick Perlstein. Rick, let me tell you about David Brooks. Okay. Here's some stuff about David Brooks you probably didn't know. Like, I came here to talk about Nixon and blah, blah, whatever.
All right, we got to do a news roundup, Drift Class.
All right, news roundup, because a lot of news happened in the last week.
Yeah, the Bidening continues, Drift Class.
Bidening does continue. It is ongoing, and he may be the most consequential president in modern American history. I don't know. The jury's still out, but he's doing a good job, and keep up the good work, Joe. Speaking of terrible jobs, Donald Trump, Secretary of State and future 2024 GOP presidential wannabe, who will be knocked out before the race begins, a guy named Mike Pompeo declared that Randy Weingarten, The president of the American Federation of Teachers is, quote, the most dangerous person in the world. And here is Mike Pompeo, quote, I tell the story often. I get asked, who's the most dangerous person in the world? Is it Chairman Kim? Is it Xi Jinping? No, the most dangerous person in the world is Randy Weingarten. It's not a close call. If you ask who's the most likely to take this republic down, it would be the teachers' unions and the filth that they're teaching our children and the fact they don't know how to do math and reading or writing.
He just made a lot of enemies among teachers, among children of teachers, among women who love their children's teachers, who appreciate their children's teachers, PTA members, and all of us know how to use a phone and how to organize.
Yep.
And Mike Pompeo ain't going to be president.
No.
Because he pissed off the wrong people by going after little Randy Weingarten. What the hell?
Well, but he knows his base. He knows his base hates unions, hates teachers,
he
hates
knows
learning,
his base
hates
don't
math.
have children in elementary school anymore.
And they want to blame the radical left for, Hunter Biden's laptop being taught in classrooms. I'm not going to
say F you. I'm just going to move on. All right.
Move on.
Before the midterm election, the New York Times was filled with stories about what a criminal hellscape the country had become and how progressive prosecutors were letting violent criminals loose in your neighborhood. Post-election from the New York Times, quote, New York and its suburbs are among the safest large communities in the U.S., but amid a torrent of doomsday-style ads and headlines about rising crime, suburban swing voters helped drive a Republican rout that played a decisive role in capturing the House. They're particularly talking about the New York House races.
Yeah.
And, whose fault was that, New York Times?
Yeah. Well, there's no. I'm hoping that Elon Musk just buys the New York Times. I'm going to tell you right now, because that'd be a fun...
David Brooks. That would be terrible.
That'd be a fun 3 weeks. No, David Brooks would have to be like a stripper. I mean, it would be a wild 3 weeks, and then there would be no more New York Times. But I'd pay to see it.
Okay, so this next story is a little stale, but we didn't cover it last week, and we want to make sure we cover it. So
it's about Ashley Parker, who was miffed that she wasn't invited to Naomi Biden's wedding, and so both sides. I spent 4 years covering the Trump White House and 2 years covering the Biden White House. What's fascinating is that they both lie, albeit in very different ways. Trump team was shameless, whereas the Biden team is too cute by half. Yeah. Priorities.
Here is a really interesting story to me. CBS reports, and Mike Pence talked about this on 60 Minutes as well, that his wife underwent in vitro fertilization as they were trying to start a family. And this sort of blows the whole abortion issue out of the water, because there's a whole lot of fetuses that are demised.
Yes, discarded.
That's the way they use the word demise rather than killed or dead or whatever, because they're just not implanted, or they're fertilized eggs.
Right.
But they're not used in the process because they're not viable. And speaking as somebody who went through infertility treatment myself, I didn't do IVF. I didn't have to, but I certainly, that was on the table for us. There's no question that the mothers who are going through all of that medical intervention are good moms who want children, who desperately want to be moms.
Yep.
And they're not trying to murder their babies.
No.
And a lot of them are Republican.
Yeah.
Like Mike Pence and his wife.
Well, you got to remember, the world is divided into the saved, for whom, all sins are forgiven,
right,
and filthy liberals for whom all sins will burn in hell.
Yeah.
So if Mike Pence is using science to create many, 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 many viable cell clusters,
or cell clusters that are viable and inviable, and choosing which ones to use, and playing God, oh my God,
with the future of life on Earth, that's okay, because he's a Republican, he's Mike Pence, he's saved. But liberal ladies trying to control their own body, that's against God's will.
Or use medical intervention to do so. Right. Yeah. Okay.
My Pillow guy, CEO Mike Lindell, has just announced he's running against Ronna Romney McDaniel for the chair of the Republican Party. It's going to be a soft and cushy chair because it's going to have all those pillows on it.
Soft. Let them fight.
Opposite of the Iron Throne. It's going to be soft, cushy, and nice. And it'll be great.
Effective November 23rd, Twitter stopped enforcing its COVID-19 disinformation policy.
Yeah.
This is horrible.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why do you suppose that happened, Blue Gal?
Uh,
On Fox News, it's Hunter Biden's laptop all the time on every story.
and inserting it into stories where it makes no contextual sense.
By the way, did you hear about Hillary Clinton's emails?
Yeah, we're talking about Twitter and Elon Musk on Outnumbered. And Harris Faulkner said, and, Hunter Biden's laptop. Like, everybody's like, what? Wait.
Well, I remember sitting in the men's room. A guy next to me tapped on the wall, said, "Do you have any toilet paper over there?" I said, "Sure, here's some." He said, "By the way, that reminds me of Hillary Clinton's emails." And that's when I pushed the entire toilet over and ran away because it is just a matter of this is what's maddening. It's not complicated. This is just taking a hammer and beating it into the skulls of the idiots who watch this shit forever. Yeah. So that's all they think about. And then every subject from then on will be Hunter Biden's laptop. And then you have New York Times has to report on it because all those Republicans are talking about it.
Well, and the fact that they screwed their own pooch on this because this story peaked way too early. Mm-hmm. And, the porn stuff from the laptop, the sex tapes from the laptop, everybody's seen them. They know Hunter Biden was a drug addict. He's admitted it. He's come clean. He's paid his taxes. He's made amends. They're still dealing with the gun charge, but Hunter Biden has completely cooperated with the FBI on every step, gone under oath, cooperated with the forensics on the laptop, told them which emails are definitely his, et cetera.
But now, on the other hand, Joe Biden is guilty of being a dad who loves his son.
Yeah.
Is worried about him.
And Jim Jordan really doesn't understand that and needs to look into it. Yeah. Okay. The House passed legislation guaranteeing 7 whole days of paid sick leave a year. I just can't. As part of the mandated rail labor agreement, the vote was 221 to 207. Guess which party voted against sick leave?
Yep. Every Democrat backed it, right?
Every Democrat backed it. And this is the thing that is going to avert a rail strike if it passes the Senate. Because that's what they want, is to be able to take time off if they have COVID and not get fired.
But on the other hand, if Republicans can stop it from passing, they can blame Joe Biden for crashing the U.S. rail system. Brit Hume.
You want to remember something that Brit Hume said at the beginning of the year?
I do.
Is this a quote of the year, maybe?
It's up there. If the crookies are still open, I'd like to nominate.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I'll put
Brit
this on
Hume,
the list.
From January 13th of this very year, not 20 years ago. Here's a thought. Let's base our view on whether 1/6 was an insurrection, quote unquote, on whether those arrested are charged with insurrection. So far, none has been.
Uh-oh. Turns out this week, they were charged and convicted of seditious conspiracy. 2 of them.
Uh-huh.
Founder and leader of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Kelly Meggs, who ran the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers at the time of the January 6th attack, was also convicted of seditious conspiracy and other felonies. Seditious conspiracy carries a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison. Yeah. The rest of the Oath Keepers on trial were found guilty of obstruction, trying to hide it, trying to cover up the crime. Right, yep. Right.
And a few of them got off the hook because they weren't directly involved in the conspiracy. But yeah, they're coming for you.
And the jury was clearly very careful about examining all the evidence and determining guilt and innocence as they should. Yeah.
Now, here's some good news. The Senate passed the Respect for Marriage Act to codify federal protection for same-sex and interracial marriages. Now, while the legislature does not force states to issue marriage license to same-sex couples, it does require states to recognize all marriages that were legal where they were performed and protect current same-sex union. The bill also repeals the awful 1996 Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as between a man and a woman. The bill now goes back to the House for another vote and then to Joe Biden for his signature.
Hakeem Jeffries was unanimously elected to lead Democrats in the House. He's the first African-American to be elected to lead any party in the Congress. And he ran unopposed and was unanimous. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, because we want to cover both sides, Drift Glass.
We want to be
fair.
Kevin
McCarthy has enough votes to be elected House Speaker. And Mark Meadows was ordered to testify to the grand jury investigating Trump's effort to overturn the election in Georgia.
Yeah. Meanwhile, also in Georgia, the Georgia Supreme Court reinstated the state's 6-week ban on abortions. A lower court ruling last week had put that ban on hold, calling it unconstitutional.
What's happening with the Forward Party, Driftglass?
Oh, goodness me, Blue Gal. Lots of things, but this week they were all over Twitter urging chumps to donate to them on Giving Tuesday, a date designed to prompt charitable donations to nonprofits and good causes, not to fucking political parties. Apparently, Andrew Yang got Giving Tuesday mixed up with Sucker Sunday.
From the Department of Homeland Security, LGBTQ, Jews, and migrants face increased domestic terror threats. Things we do already know. And according to a senior DHS official, Kanye West is making the already bad situation much, much worse.
Yeah. Bill Barr, the aforementioned Bill Barr, believes that Donald Trump is an unhinged, deranged criminal who's unfit to be president and will also support him if he wins the GOP nomination.
Because Green New Deal, Driftglass.
Yeah, can't have that.
Merriam-Webster's word of the year for 2022 is gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's a good word to know.
It is. And in local news, having got blown out in the midterms, the Illinois GOP has decided the problem isn't that their policies are abhorrent to normal humans, but that voters suck, and that the collar counties around Chicago need to be, quote, fixed, unquote. Jesse Sullivan, who I'm sure you've never heard of, but he ran number 2 in the Illinois Republican primary for governor, and whose website, according to Google, is, quote, we're having trouble finding this site, is concerned that for some mysterious reason, quote, unmarried women broke Democratic by 37 points.
Yeah, wonder why.
Who can explain that? Probably they're broken and need husbands. That's the problem. Darren Bailey's sugar daddy coordinator, a guy named Dan Proft, announced on his radio show that, quote, if you're a Republican in Illinois, stop lying to yourself. Illinois can't be saved, and Illinoisans don't want to be saved.
So move to Florida like Dan Proft did. Yeah.
So just keep digging, heroes. Just keep digging.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is a dog, however.
Yeah.
And this dog is named Dakota, or Coda for short. Coda is seen in this photo with her front paws on a skateboard because, quote unquote, riding a skateboard gets Coda attention. And of course, Coda or Dakota loves freshly poured dog food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your dogs will hop on their skateboards and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured. You can visit Coda at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. And feel free to send us a holiday picture of your pet. That would be fun.
That'd be fun.
Whatever holidays you celebrate. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. We love doing this podcast. I think I forgot to say hashtag fire to joy. Fire to joy.
Fire to joy already. Come on.
Yes.
I think, honestly, I think it has to do with the commissioners and the last 2 are going to be in place. It's bureaucracy. It's not a lack of intention.
He's embedded like a tick. I understand that. But
and there's a whole process. Him. I know. There's a whole process for dismissing him, and the process can't go forward until all the little pieces are in place. Blah, blah, blah. I know.
We're still going to be on Team Fire to Joy. I don't care.
Oh, yeah. No, we've been on Team Fire to Joy since day one. It's just that's, those are the rules.
It is what it is. All right. Tammy, our angel nerd, pointed out to me that we're not at 1% anymore. We're at 2%. So we're 2% podcast.
Oh, my God.
Approximately 2%. close to 2% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution.
Wow, so wonderful.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much.
You 2%ers, yes.
Yeah.
We don't want to become 3%ers, not that way.
No, but we'll stick with the way our milk is purchased and brought
Yes,
home.
2% milk, right.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to be, insurrectionists. We just want to have your support for the podcast. And you can support this podcast as well. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. We have PayPal, postal address information. We love getting Christmas cards and holiday cards from you guys. And our Patreon link is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, why don't you get someone else to listen? We'd love to have more listeners as well. And thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are all broken up about the Chris Cillizza layoff, just as we were preparing to do a No Fair Remembering Stuff podcast about Chris Cillizza.
Well, forget it.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license, copyright 2022, BGBG Productions Incorporated.